What's the scariest conspiracy theory you've ever heard? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Those Facebook memes of posting a current selfie and a photo of you taken 10 years ago is to program facial recognition software. And once AI becomes capable of it, it will be able to checkpoint and log your face even in old video footage from years or decades ago. Security cameras, Ring cameras, home video, archival footage, etc. Your life will have a digital timeline. The tech company's wet dream is to get wearables like Google Glass to become popular. Then even the people who don't want to be recorded are still being logged in by somebody wearing smart glasses looking at them. Facebook was using your photos to train their face recognition like 20 years ago. That was one of the points of you being able to mark people in photos. Story 2. That Ask Reddit is mostly a data scraping tool used by marketing companies to farm data from the masses based on what company X is selling. That is, Disney wants to know what movie to remake next, so let's pay someone to ask about favorite Disney films from their childhood and log the responses. Actually, I just made that up, but I have no doubt it's happening. Edit, yes, I'm aware that the idea of Reddit selling data for market research is not exactly novel. The crux of the conspiracy theory is that many questions are not asked by real accounts. Consider a situation where something is trending somewhere else online. Then a question is asked by a user to get a better idea of whether the trend is exploitable in some way or just a flash in the pan. Story 3. Insane whack-job conspiracies purposefully get propagated to detract from actual shady that goes on. What's more, it works. If you see someone even mention something might be a conspiracy, that person is automatically determined to be a lunatic. Dangerous when you consider just how corrupt the government, military, and corporations are. There is also the gray area called the limited hangout, where something is purported to be true only to be disguising something greater. Another conspiracy in itself. The CIA have released classified documents about brainwashing the masses, and plenty of their experiments have been released. The CIA literally brought in the scientists and all the info gathered from the horrible experiments done by the Nazis. If you've gone down the rabbit hole, you'll notice a ton of ridiculous conspiracies to mislead people finding out the truth. Relearn reality for yourself. Be an individual with your own understanding and experience. Only thing you can do. Story 4. The current social wars were designed to distract us from the trillions of dollars that went from the middle class to the wealthy. It will continue to happen while people fight over body parts and bedroom activities. The people almost broke through with Occupy Wall St., but the PTB continues to divide people to make sure it can't happen again. In the past 4 years, the billionaire class in America has increased their wealth by some 700 people, hold a combined wealth of over $5.5 trillion. The saddest part about this shit is how few people can even comprehend how big of a number that is. Story 5. That arresting the people in Jeffrey Epstein's little black book would bring this world to a grinding halt because of how many disgusting rich people there are in power. What we learned from COVID is that what makes the world grind to a halt is poor people not doing their jobs. The richest 1 million people in the world could drop dead right now, and no one else's lives would be materially impacted because they don't do anything or create any tangible value for anyone else. They just accumulate wealth. Those people don't do anything. They own stock, but so what? The companies wouldn't stop working if they disappeared. The marketing department, HR, administrative staff, engineers, designers, manufacturers, the janitor could do their job just as well, and nothing should change. Just one less mouth to feed at the top. Story 6. In the early 1980s, Coca-Cola deliberately removed Coke Classic, made with cane sugar, from production, and introduced New Coke, aka Coke 2, as a ruse, knowing full well that people would complain that it wasn't the same as before, so they staged an apology commercial from Coke CEO saying, "We're sorry. We hear you. When has a CEO ever said that?" and reintroduced Coke Classic with corn syrup instead of cane sugar, knowing that by the time it was re-released, the market's inventory of the original Coke Classic had largely been distributed and consumed, so very few people, if any, could actually compare them side by side to see if they tasted the same. By the way, the tariffs on cane sugar were increased ginormously just before they did this, which was a way to encourage domestic corn production. Too long, didn't read. Coke pulled a switcheroo by changing sweeteners and lied, saying that it was the exact same as before. Story 7. Anytime a larger beer company buys a smaller one, they do a similar version of this. They introduce a specialty beer or something, while they let the higher-selling beers from the smaller brewery all get depleted out of the gas stations, grocery stores, and bars. Once they believe that most or all of the old product is gone, they put out their version of those popular beers from after the acquisition, hoping that people won't be able to compare them side by side. They do this for two reasons. One, they use a different version of one of the main ingredients which changes the flavor slightly, and two, when the larger company scales up the recipe to match their larger distribution, it alters the flavor. Story 8. Here's a new one for you. Spontaneous life is actually extremely common in the universe. We talk about the primordial ooze where the first proteins formed into a cell and all that, but this theory states that life actually spontaneously arises on a microscopic level constantly. Well, constantly on a universal timescale, at least. Not all of it is carbon-based, and in fact life has formed in many different ways that we don't recognize as true life. However, there is one critical thing that acts as a gateway: reproduction. Almost all life that is spontaneously created lives a short time and dies without reproducing. In our world, there have been two instances of spontaneous life that were able to reproduce. The precursor that lead to all life as we know it on Earth over millions and millions of years: viruses. Story 9. NASA was behind the moon landings. NASA tried to fake the moon landings. They even hired Stanley Kubrick to direct it and smuggled him into the studio in secret. But he was problematic. He was such a perfectionist and was so unsatisfied with the footage they were getting that he insisted they shoot it on site. The entire space race was more centered around having funding to research orbital technology for the purposes of espionage and ICBM capabilities. The whole super science exciting new world thing was the public face that allowed the superpowers to fund that research while pretending not to be war-focused. Story 10. A small one. Samsung announced that the Galaxy Watch 4 would include a non-invasive continuous glucose monitor, which would allow you to monitor your blood sugar at any time while you wear it, for as long as you own it. A month before the 4 was released, that feature quietly disappeared from all of the marketing, without explanation, and now, years later, is nowhere to be found. I believe Abbott Laboratories, makers of the Freestyle Light Glucometer and the Freestyle Libre continuous glucose monitor systems, panicked, fearing that a non-expiring, non-invasive glucose monitor would be hugely popular among diabetics and devastate their death grip on the market, paid a huge bribe to Samsung to drop the whole thing. Story 11. That there is no such thing as food-safe plastic. There absolutely is food-safe plastic, but it's obviously limited to a certain time frame due to overall product characteristics and storing conditions. All materials break down eventually, both chemically and mechanically. When trying to find the right polymer compounds, a lot of aspects have to be considered. How does temperature or exposure to light impact the packaging in the food? What happens during long-term storage, especially if not recommended conditions or constantly changing conditions? What happens when packaging is being opened? How may contact with oxygen impact foods, and how might that impact how packaging behaves over time? All safety measures are temporary, hence certain products with expiration dates despite not going bad for a long time. The issue is with the increased probability of packaging breaking down one way or another, contaminating the food eventually. For example, water in pets should not go bad, but the pet does. Food safety is ensured within a certain set of parameters with error margin, such as temperature and radiation exposure. UV being an issue for most things, storing pet in bright locations with direct sunlight will speed up chemical breakdown. If it is a hot environment, even more. Then again, extremely low temperatures will also impact material characteristics. Repeat cooling and heating cycles are detrimental as well. So pet until expiration is food safe, if recommended storing conditions are met. Because material stability respectively inertness is guaranteed, in theory, but the problem goes beyond that. Companies will purchase low-quality material, sometimes with impurities, further reducing the time frame of temporary food safety. Companies will also ignore safety concerns due to chemical makeup of their foods, using packaging materials that are not adequate. Companies will also disregard suggested storage requirements, using a combination of materials and foods that isn't recommended. And lastly, consumers are not aware how they should store their food properly, so they ensure food safety. Overall, any plastic material brings so many issues to the table and requires so much oversight and education, it really outweighs the benefits. We really should consider switching to glass, even better with a deposit system. Story 12. It's not particularly scary, but go read a bit of Commander David Fravers' statement about his F-18 crew that were called to check on an object they had been tracking on the USS Nimitz for weeks in the early 2000s. It was dropping from 80,000 to 20,000 in mere seconds. When they managed to begin tracking it, the radar had trouble picking it up. There was no infrared heat signature for the propulsion of the craft as it hovered over the ocean, and it was pulling G's no pilot could make without. A full blackout. It disappeared from view of both planes and popped back onto the radar 60 miles away in less than a minute. His crew also took a different video years later of a similar object. Really makes you wonder. There's a full statement of the hearing online. Story 13. The one about Bitcoin being invented by an AI, which is now accumulating a huge amount of computer power by greedy humans building big Bitcoin mining centers to make money. But all they are doing is building an ultra-resilient network for the AI to run on. The AI also has a huge amount of wealth to now pay anonymously to humans to do its dirty work in the physical world. A superintelligence at some point wants more computation and robot arms. Given robot arms aren't all that great, money is the next best thing, as humans will do anything for bigger numbers on their bank account. For me, it's truly terrifying. Story 14. There's a theory that your phone is secretly listening to you 24/7. I guess that's why my ads are always about cat food. My cat must be selling my secrets. This is more or less just a thing. Even if you don't want to jump to the conspiratorial, the mic's on and listening to me, but it probably is, your phone tracks everything you do. Everywhere you go, how long you're there, who's around you for a while, etc. Marketers want maximum bang for their buck. So they're going to try and feed you as much relevant crap as they can based on the data that can be easily collected from your phone. And those algorithms are only getting better all the time. They know you, they know who you spend time with and when, work, school, etc., and their interests, and that all weaves together to spoon-feed you some very highly catered content that will more often than you'd think seem oddly prescient. Cat food ads are simple enough. You have a cat, you've been to a pet store semi-recently. Algorithm says, kitty's probably running out of food by now, and boom, you're getting ads for Meow Mix at PetSmart. Source, work in advertising, and this kind of thing is covered in Google's most basic ad program tutorials. Story 15. That aliens exist, but we're the only dummies being loud because there's a bigger, scarier race of aliens out there that all the other races are hiding from. Edit. So I'm not saying this is true or arguing that it is, but every time I hear this theory, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. I thought we were talking about the scariest conspiracy theories we've ever heard, not arguing our own theories. Don't know why everyone is jumping to tell me I'm wrong. I mean, yes, aliens for sure exist, but there's a better reason they're not contacting us, and the answer is extremely simple. Space is big. No, you don't understand. Space is huge. Even if we had infinite powered lasers pointing directly to other alien civilizations, and we had been transmitting them since radio was invented in 1901, our lasers would only be reaching 0.00015% of the Milky Way. Nobody outside of 120 light-years away could detect us, simply because no light we've generated could have reached them by now. Or when they look at Earth, they'd see us 120 years ago. So yeah, 0.00015% is absolutely tiny. Not even mentioning the universe. Simply put, we haven't been around long enough for the signals we create to reach anybody. Hell, we've probably only had the technology to actually generate a strong enough signal to be detected on a planet in another solar system for, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 decades. Basically, scientists think that it takes at least a third-generation star to support life. A third-generation star is a star made from materials of 2 previous generations of exploded stars. So stars formed, lived, died, exploded, another star formed, lived, died, exploded, then finally, our sun lives. So life could not have existed for the entirety of the 15-ish billion years the universe has existed. Only in the last, probably, 7 billion years could have existed anywhere in terms of how we understand it. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your those in the comment below.